First, we're going to be talking about the history of the Anacostia, why it has become so polluted, and why it has become a problem for those in Washington, D.C.
The Anacostia River runs about 8.4 miles from PG County, Maryland, to Washington, D.C. into the Potomac River, which flows through Washington, D.C. into the Chesapeake Bay. The history of the Anacostia begins with the Native American Indians that inhabited our lands so long ago. Back then, the Anacostia was flourishing with aquatic life, containing species like the brown bullhead catfish, white perch, bass, and snapping turtles. The Anacostia became a central piece of the transatlantic slave trade and domestic tobacco trade shortly after. The increased number of tobacco farms led to mass amounts of runoff into the Anacostia. This caused an accumulation of unwanted chemicals into the river, which led to a population decline in much of the aquatic population. Shortly after the American Revolution, Washington, D.C. became the capital of the United States. Architect Pierre L'Enfant constructed a layout of the city, which included plans to restore D.C.'s waterways, including the Anacostia. The plan for the Anacostia was never put into action, however, as local landowners refused to give up their farms and homes that were near the river. Instead, the Anacostia became a ship manufacturing center for the U.S. Navy. Right before the Civil War, city officials constructed the combined sewer overflow system that is still in place today. In the early 20th century, the outbreak of the malaria virus led city officials to dredge and channel the river. Throughout the process of industrialization and urbanization, businesses and residents have illegally dumped waste into the river. That waste has accumulated rapidly, leading to the introduction of more harmful chemicals. In the 1980s, many of Washington, D.C.'s citizens became upset toward how the river was being maintained and cared for. Numerous environmental activists banded together to create numerous environmentalist groups, the most prominent of these being the Anacostia Watershed Society. These groups have taken much legal action to facilitate change in the care and maintenance for the Anacostia. One of the more significant lawsuits occurred in 2004 when the AWS sued the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission, also known as the WSSC, for violating the Clean Water Act. This dispute was settled after the WSSC was forced to pay $1 billion toward restoration projects. Another lawsuit, one that is still ongoing, involved the Environmental Protection Agency. The AWS and many other environmentalist groups accused the EPA of allowing high amounts of E. coli bacteria into the river. Last year, the AWS, according to their water quality standards, gave the Anacostia failing grades in areas like toxic runoff and underwater vegetation. So, the Anacostia is still in grave condition.
Hey guys, so Trevor just talked about some of the background information on the Anacostia and the history. Now I'm going to talk about some of the current problems and how that affects the environment around the Anacostia River.
One of the biggest issues that has been plaguing the Anacostia is combined sewer overflow, or CSOs. The District of Columbia's sewer overflow system allows release of untreated wastewater directly into the river. Combined sewer overflow is when excessive rainfall overwhelms the internal barrier that separates rainfall from sewage. This overflow forces sewage into the river. As Trevor stated, the sewer system was implemented in the early 1850s and has yet to be updated. According to the District of Columbia Water and Sewer Authority, CSOs accounted for an estimated 73% of the average annual increase in fecal coliform bacteria along the Anacostia River. Fecal coliform bacteria and other pathogens that are deposited into the river debilitate the water quality and create hypoxic conditions which lead to large-scale fish death and the deterioration of local wildlife. While coliform bacteria alone will not likely cause illness, its presence indicates a higher risk of harmful pathogens in the water supply. The Anacostia Watershed Society sued the D.C. Water and Sewer Authority in 1999 for allowing more than 2 billion gallons of CSO and urban runoff to be released directly into the river. The Anacostia Watershed Society also sued Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission in 2004 for releasing 4 million gallons of raw sewage into the Anacostia tributaries between 2001 to 2004. The issue of CSOs has been prevalent for decades, and even though millions of dollars have been granted and designated specifically to improve the sewer system in D.C., no significant changes have been made. Another issue that has had detrimental effects on the Anacostia is gentrification. Gentrification refers to redeveloping and improving areas to appeal to middle-class tastes. Since D.C. was selected to be the nation's capital in 1790, the area has become heavily urbanized. High crime and poor public schooling are two problems that D.C. has yet to address. Now, city planners are introducing severe gentrification and a lack of affordable housing. Many new apartments, condos, and trendy lofts are springing up around the area. Not only does this force lower-income families out, it increases the damage done to the Anacostia. Ted Howard, executive director of the Democracy Collaborative at the University of Maryland, says that displacement can rob urban neighborhoods of their cultural histories, severing the connections to the past that help make them unique. Gentrification leads to increased amounts of contaminants in the river, and David Valensky's team found an increase in trace metals, DDTs, pesticides, and other dangerous chemicals. The EPA also states that PCBs are a high concern and must be reduced by 90% to meet quality standards. That means that the 30 kilograms per year of PCBs must be reduced to 1.5 kilograms per year in order to meet that water quality standard. And one of the EPA's goals is to reduce that by 90%, which would make the Anacostia fishable and swimmable by 2032.
Thanks, Billy, for that information. Now we will discuss the steps being taken in order to better the Anacostia's condition. In 2008, the Maryland State Highway Administration converted a landfill to a wetland that covers over 20 acres. Wetlands are a natural water filter and wildlife habitat. One of the Anacostia's natural wetlands, called the Gateways, is currently under restoration. The gateways were infested with an invasive plant species called phragmites. These plants originate from Europe and can grow over a foot long. The removal of these plants started in 2014 and is still active. In 2009, the Department of Energy and Environment, or the DOEE, passed the Anacostia River Cleanup and Protection Act, or more commonly known as the BAG Law. The law requires all district businesses that sell food or alcohol to charge a 5-cent fee for each disposable paper or plastic distribution with any purchase. There has also been a local ban of styrofoam products. These policies have lessened the amount of pollution that enters the Anacostia. In 2016, the DOEE started to conduct a remedial investigation and feasibility study of the Anacostia River sediments. According to the DOEE, these investigations will assess the nature and extent of pollution in the river by sampling sediments and fish for a wide variety of chemicals. Since Washington, D.C.'s sewage system has not been updated since the 1800s, a $1 billion tunnel project was launched in 2016 to divert all the sewage from the river down to the wastewater treatment plant. The huge boring machine that is making this possible is called Nanny. She's making tunnels 100 feet underground, 3.8 kilometers long, and with a diameter of 7 meters. Now that is humongous. This is how Nanny works. While Nanny is moving along, the clay she is digging is placed on a converter belt, which is then deposited at the bottom of the shaft, where it is then picked up by a giant crane and eventually removed from the site. Nanny's work is projected to be completed in March 2018. With Nanny's assistant, the local effort, and administrative direction, the Anacostia Watershed Society has projected the Anacostia to be swimmable and fishable between the years of 2025 and 2030.
Well, thanks for listening to us, guys. We encourage you to go out and learn more about a body of water near you.
Such as the one behind me, the Wintergreen Gorge, located right here at Barron.
We'd like to thank you again and wish you a great summer break.